You know, it's I think Dave wanted a pat on the head from the industry. Getting invited to various cons of hey Dave, you did it, and like by that point it was just he's done, good.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can see why Dave would be annoyed with that. I mean, it's like I got my contributor copies of Walt's Empire Strikes Back in, and I'm like, I'm really proud of this, and I called my dad, and I'm like, Dad, I got one, and I'll send it to you. And my dad's like, yeah, I don't need any more stuff in my life. And it's like, I wrote a comic book, you dick.
Oh,
well,
yes.
Well, I mean, my dad for the past 15, 20 years has been downsized. I'm cleaning his apartment, getting rid of stuff. I got this. Do you want it? I have a barrel full of hats from the 1980s. He worked at a nuke plant, and do you want these hats? I got 50 of them, and I'm like, I'll take one. I don't need 50 hats. I got all these old T-shirts that don't fit me anymore. Well, Dad, they're old T-shirts. I don't necessarily think they'll fit me, and I don't think I want shirts that you wore 20 years ago. But that's
my dad's story.
Sure.
Buy the house that I'm living in. Had the liberty to do some remodeling on it before I actually had to move in, and one of the things I'm doing is changing out the baseboards all around the house. And my dad's retired, he's helping me out, and he's taking the nails out of the baseboards. Dad, what are you doing? I'm taking the nails out. I'll bend them back and then we can reuse them. It's like, Dad, they're nails. We'll just go buy some. Oh, well, but the baseboard's still good. It's like, no, I'm working with a friend and I'm going to custom make a baseboard for everything. Really? Like, yes. And then talking with him about it, mid-50s, he's out in the boonies in Connecticut. He and Mom are having kids, and he's having to make the house bigger. Well, mid-50s in Connecticut, there isn't a Lowe's or a Home Depot 20 minutes away.
Yeah, you go to the local store, and if they don't have a box of nails, you got to wait 2 weeks.
Exactly. And so if you can bend a nail straight, you bend a nail straight. And so, yeah, that idea, you want these hats, you want the T-shirt, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, and part of it is I'm fourth generation Packrat. And my dad's third generation. And because he had to clean out his grandmother's house after she died, and she was a Packrat who then went slightly senile, so she was hiding stuff. So, like, they found her Crisco canisters with Crisco in them in her sock drawer because she was hiding it from the neighbor that she thought was going to steal it. And
oh goodness.
Oh yeah, I mean it was we were cleaning her place out and it was pretty horrible. And then when my grandma died, it was she had downsized from a house to an apartment, but she didn't really downsize. And we were going through, and it's like she's got all these clothes that didn't fit her, and who wants these clothes? Like, give them to Goodwill. It's like Goodwill's not even going to take them. And she had five end tables for a living room set, and she who needs 5 end tables? Well, she had one, and she had another one that she got from and all this. She had a storage unit, and when she died, we had to rent another storage unit to sort the first storage unit into to figure out what was all there to get rid of it.
Absolutely.
So then my dad's a Packrat, but he's seen the light, and it's like I need to get rid of everything and live like a monk. And I'm like, okay, Dad, I totally support that. Just don't call me and ask. I have my own hoard I have to take care of.
I would be very surprised if some level of hoarding isn't symptomatic to comic collecting as a whole.
My wife was working with somebody who's my brother and I have comics, old comics. Are they worth any money? And the wife comes and asks me, and I'm like, well, what do they got? And she comes back with a list, and it's just titles. Well, Spider-Man and Thor, and I'm like, well, Spider-Man and Thor can be worth money, yes. Schedule a time for us to go look at it. Next thing I know, my wife comes home with a plastic bag full of random comics, and well, she's got these, and she says she's got more, and I'm looking like, it's Walt Simonson Thor. Those things are relatively worthless. You can't make money on them.
Yeah, right.
It's only like 2 issues, and it's random issue of Spider-Man, and then there's some, Archie and Veronica and Betty, and I'm like, these are worthless. And she's like, Well, what should I do with them? I'm like, take them back and let her know her comics are worthless. And a week later, another bag comes home, and I still have the first bag, and it's more worthless comics. Well, she'd like you to sell these. I'm like, I can't make money on this. Even eBay is going to I'll make more money paying for shipping than I would for the books. And I started going through my comics, and I found these bags, and I'm like, my wife hasn't worked with this woman for like 2-3 years. I'm like, get a hold of her and see if she wants the comics. Like, no, she doesn't care. We can keep them. I'm like, great. Now I have worthless comics on top of my worthless comics.
But you can't throw them away, right?
Well, there's this part of me that's like, okay, because I have a friend that I let store stuff at my house. That the deal is, any books and comics he doesn't want, he can leave at my house because then I can read them whenever I want. And I have a long box full of comics that he brought to my house, let me read. When I gave them back, he said, "Oh no, you can keep these and do whatever you want with them." And it's like, I have 500 comics that I don't want, that are relatively new, so they're relatively worthless, because it's, like, all the Brian Michael Bendis Superman stuff. It's not like these are rare books. They printed hundreds of thousands of these things. And
they've got eye tracks all over them now.
It's just, it's one of those, like, they're in I put them in a long box, and then I'm going through my comics, and I'm like, I am short a long box. I need to get his books out so I can put my books in. But you can't throw away that issue of Archie, because you never know. It might be the only one that's worth money.
So, speaking of Archie comics, 2 things to look for. 1, early appearances of, what's her name? There's a Cherry or something like that.
Oh, Cheryl?
Yeah, I can't remember her character name. Anyway, those, but then also the so-called innuendo covers.
Oh, like the one from the 50s of Betty was drowning and Archie rescued her, and he had to beat off 3 guys to do it?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's actually 70s.
Oh, okay. I don't...
And then Archie getting a pearl necklace for her. It is just like, you gotta be kidding me. But, so what do? I go through my box of Archie comics to see if I have anything.
Well, the beating off 3 guys one is on deck for a Cerebus in Hell parody cover.
Oh, that's good.
It's the one Archie cover I know people know, and I'm like, I gotta find a way of doing it with Cerebus in Hell. Because that's Dave's big thing with the Cerebus in Hell guys is, I'm out of covers. You guys got to give me covers so I can do more strips. And they're like, oh, Matt's got great ideas. And I'm like, really? Because I sent you guys a bunch of ideas and I haven't heard anything back. Like, oh yeah, that one's approved. That one's approved. Some of them are, but like, I did one Fantastic 448 parody, and Galactus has changed to Gal lactating. And I'm like, Dave's gonna love that one, and like, as far as I know, nobody sent it to him. I'm trying to think. There were a couple others that that I thought of that were iconic covers that he could do, but part of it is I have to make a crappy mock-up, send it to them so they can make a good mock-up, and then they send it to Dave and he likes it and does it. Technically, I'm supposed to be writing the 3rd Vark Wars issue, which I've been saying that for 2 months now, or 3 months now, and it's like, I'm going to do it this weekend, and then I get busy.
Life interrupts.
Well, it's
like this phone call.
It's not even life interrupting. It's like I'm sitting at the computer, and it's like I don't feel funny, and I don't want to type, and those are the 2 things I need to do right now.
Yeah.
And
keep a notebook so when the idea hits you, you can write it down.
I have all these little scraps of paper. The worst one is I sent Dave a fax saying I had a really brilliant gag, but I need a number of Dante or Dore images. And I emailed all the guys on the Cerebus and Hell team that work on the book, and I faxed Dave saying, give me your top 2 favorites so that I can make this crowd scene. And I was going through my email today and found Dave's response where he went, oh, just pick any 2, it doesn't matter. And I'm looking at it going, for the life of me, I can't remember what this gag that I supposedly had in mind is.
Oh, jeez.
It had to have been, oh, now I remember what it was. So, one of the pages in the issue is going to be a parody of the old Heroes World Marvel ads.
Right.
Which were always really poorly drawn, so I'm just going to draw the page. So that it looks really poorly drawn.
Right.
And it's going to be an ad for the Vark Wars action figures. And part of it, why I haven't done it is I haven't had time. Part of it is I got to find one of these old crappy drawn ads so that I can go, okay, yeah, I got to make it look at least this good. And it's one of those, the gag completely left my mind until I just said it now. It's like, oh yeah, that's what it was, and I got to say it so that I have it on record so I can play the video back.
And remember what your gag is.
Well, I mean, and that's, you know, I work an 8-hour factory job, so I go to work and I pretty much shut my brain off, and I can just think all day. So I think of blog posts that are always brilliant. I get home and about a third of it makes it to the screen because it's like I start typing and I'm just like, tired, don't care, hit post. Which is how I did the screaming post where everything was large and in capital, and it was like originally it was supposed to be that, and then the post calms down and it goes from there, and it's like I did it and I'm like, I'll just post it, it'll be fine, and I'm like, yeah, I know it's funny, but everybody else thinks I'm on the edge of a building with a shotgun getting ready to take everybody out.
So speaking of the blog posts, and I know you responded to the message that I left on the post showing the PetuniaCon poster.
Yes, I'm probably going to post that again on Monday.
I think one of the things that's happening...
Too many things in a post?
And they're too dissimilar.
Okay. See, every now and then I have to go back through Tim's old stuff, and I'm like, Tim did these amazingly short posts about one thing, and I can't focus like that. I keep going, there's 12 things I need to talk about. I'll just talk about all 12 things. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm shotgun blasting and I need to get more precise.
Well, because I was honestly thinking about the guy who, he spent all this time making these ceramic figures. He's showing, like, 10 or 12 of them. Those things were very well crafted.
Well, you saw the one with Dave Holden one, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's I mean, those are not small.
Okay, so, alright, so the smaller pictures, they're actually the size of what Dave was holding. Okay.
I believe, yeah.
And, I mean, I felt badly for the guy because here this is something I'm doing, and all us fans are like, crickets chirping. Nobody says anything about it.
The thing is, he sent the message to Dave of these, I want to sell these, and Dave responded through me, and it's like, I kind of got to track him down and be like, okay, here's Dave's response. Yes, you can sell these. Because I don't think he knows. Because he hasn't posted anything in the Facebook group about, hey, I'm making these figures.
Right.
And I'm going to have to... It's part of the problem of helping out Dave is that Dave's like, hey, you're on the internet, go talk to this guy. And it's like, I don't know Adam Beechin. He's like a big shot in Hollywood. I'm some schmuck from Wisconsin. Do you understand how this works? And, Adam's a really nice guy. He's, I've been, like the whole Todd Klein thing. Every single email I send him, I address to Mr. Klein. Like, I don't know this guy well enough to call him Todd.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure he's going to say, oh, yeah, call me Todd. And I'll be like, yeah, you worked on Sandman. That's not going to happen. Like, Neil Gaiman, I can get away with calling Neil because everybody calls him Neil. But I don't think I can get away with calling Todd Klein Todd.
Right.
But, I mean, Dave will assume you're on the internet. Find this guy. We're all equal. We're all human type thing. It's like, yeah, Dave, it doesn't quite work that way in the real world. In the real world, you're sending an email to a guy who has assistants that take care of this. Kind of like back when I first started and I posted about Spawn 10, and I faxed Dave going, the hands through the bars, do you know who, was that in the script, specific which hand was which, or was it just directions to Todd of do a bunch of iconic hands? And Dave responded of, yeah, it was do iconic hands, Batman was in there, Green Lantern was in the thumbnail that Dave drew, maybe Wonder Woman, but like everybody else, it was pretty much just generic hands. But here's Todd's assistant's email, and you could ask her to ask Todd. And I'm like, okay, so I sent her an email, and I have not heard anything back in 3 years.
Right.
It's like, the email came in. She's like, "Well, I'll be sure to pass your message along to Todd." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure Todd got it." Went, "Sir, who?"
Yeah. Yep. Well, our little corner of the world is very big to us and very big to Dave. But these other guys, they're still working on their careers. They have deadlines, they have families, they have other things that they're doing. And somewhere in there, you have to, fish or cut bait. You just have to, like Todd kind of said, I'll stick around for 2 more days to see what people's comments are, and then I'm out of the pool.
Well, and I mean, Dave's latest facts, like his final facts that I put at the end of today's post, was him saying that he really believes My Life as a Letterer by Todd Klein would be one of the greatest books ever written, with personal anecdotes and all sorts of stuff like that. And I can see Dave's point, yes. But is Todd Klein going to write this book and try to get a major publisher to publish it? No, he's going to do the history of comic book lettering with, probably a chapter or 2 on himself. If that.
Right.
And it's like, I can see Dave's point. Dave is fascinated by this, and there are other people that will be fascinated by it, but that's not the book that Mr. Klein's working on.
Yeah, no.
And it's one of these. I get a fax from Dave, and I was at work. I got the fax. I'm like, hey, I can download this on my phone, and I can open up my email and send it off to Mr. Klein, and then wait for his response. And when I get home, I can post it. And it was one day where it was like, hey, here's a fax from Dave, and I'm thinking as I'm sending it to him, like, yeah, this is Dave going, hey, you and I are gonna talk about lettering for the next year. And Todd Klein's like, I am going to talk to you for a week, and then I'm going back to working on my book.
Right. Yeah, and that's that tendency to get high-centered on a particular idea or theme or rabbit that Dave wants to chase. And I think that's a reoccurring theme in how he approaches things, how he does things. All the years of research into Strange Death of Alex Raymond.
Oh, there was a point where I was faxing Dave when he was working on the research, and I was faxing him, and then at one of the faxes I signed off with Matt, and then I put a postscript of "Give my regards to 1956," and it was like a 6 or 7 fax exchange between the 2 of us, and the postscript was more interesting than whatever we were faxing about. Because he's talking about his research, but he's joking about it. Like, the 50s bruise so easily, they think everything is about them. And I keep trying to explain that just wait till 1963 comes. Then you're going to understand what big and important events are. And I'm dying laughing. Like, at one point, he had a letter he sent me that got returned because my address had changed. And there was a code from the Canadian Postal Service on it, and Dave jokingly said that it matched G. Gordon Liddy's CIA number from the 70s, and I responded, and it set off this thing where we responded back and forth, just riffing about about the big conspiracy of tying everything together, including the Strange Death of Alex Raymond, and at one point. I Googled about Grace Kelly gave away. She presented the Oscar for Best Documentary in some year, and because he had mentioned Grace Kelly, and it was her daughter, whichever one it was. I forget. I think Princess Stephanie is the name, and he brought that up, and my response was that somebody had been killed, and the letters on. I typed it out. The letters they were beaten with a blunt instrument and left an imprint on the skull, and it was the letters I typed out were spelled backwards. Was best documentary for whatever Disney film won the documentary that year. And Dave just picked it up and took it back. And it was I'm amazed that not only is he up to his ears in research, but he has such an encyclopedic knowledge of all this minutia that nobody knows.
Right.
That not only can he riff on it, but when you riff on it, he already knew that, and he can riff right back. And it's one of those. Every now and then, I'm like, I gotta dig this fax exchange out and do a blog post about it. But then I start digging it out. And I'm like, oh wait, that's right. This is an exchange that the only people on the planet that would care is me and Dave, because whatever we were talking about wasn't that important.
But the PSs were.
But the PSs were hilarious. I mean, normally, because this is before I was the intrometer, I was just a fan that would occasionally fax, and it was one of those, anytime I fax him, it either has to be really important, or it has to be, like, Dave, here's a way to make money, and he comes back with, yeah, no, that's not going to make any money. Like, I came up with the idea for doing postcards, because Vistaprint, you could get a postcard for pennies. I think it was like 50 cents per postcard if you buy like 500. If you sell them for $5, you're making this amount of money.
You got bank.
And the idea would be reissue the first fifth as a series of postcards, and then continue it with the second, third, fourth, and fifth fifths. And Dave's response was, you can't do that because the people that have the original first fifth want it in original first fifth dimensions. If you change format, now you're asking them to buy something else, and it's not the format they already bought, and they're going to be mad. Plus, what do you do if the postcards get damaged? And he shot it down in detail, very thoroughly and very politely. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then he announced the Cerebus in Hell postcards from Hell, and I'm like, wait a minute. You said this wasn't going to make money, Dave. And I never brought it up. I've never brought up the, hey, wait a minute, the postcards were my idea thing. Because, A, I don't care, and B, I don't want Dave to be like, oh, well, then I should give Matt a check, because I don't want a check.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, working with, not working with it, but associating with Dave is a lot of fun, but at the same time, it's a lot of, you hear, we can't do that because. And I always want to be like, but Dave, everybody told you couldn't do a 300 issue series self-published, and you did that.
And, you pulled it off to a T.
And maybe you should just, once again, throw the bones and see what happens. I mean, I know he doesn't like to gamble, but come on.
Right.
Maybe this one time we came up with the idea that actually will work.
See, that's actually similar to where I was thinking, again, when those warehouse copies first came up, is, you're not talking about redoing every book. You're talking about monetizing a part of them. Do a run of 25 issues, or do a run of Guys, or do a run of Mothers and Daughters, or something.
Well, anything that he would have a complete run of.
Yes.
Even if it was just 10 issues in a row that might be the end of Guys, beginning of Rick's story.
And you do you just print out a Dave Sim Warehouse copy limited hardcover number 1 of 5. And there aren't enough fans to print 2,000 hardcovers of all 16 phone books. There are enough fans to do 5 or 8 hardcovers. You'll have a market for that.
Well, I mean,
you won't have a market for 2,000. You will have a market for 5, and you tie it in as a tier on, say, a Kickstarter reward.
Well, the one that always got me was Dave, went through the negative flats and pulled them apart, and because they're giant flats, he needs to make them smaller so that he can store them at the White House because they're not going to be at the printer anymore. And he talked about doing it in the Blog and Mail, and I read it and immediately called him what happened with the negatives, because he had 2 sets of the first 3 phone books, because he had the original negatives for the Cerebus phone book and then the negatives for Cerebus Biweekly.
Right.
And High Society and Church and State. And it was, I don't need 2 sets of these, and he threw them away. And it's like, Dave, you could have sold those. And Margaret said the same thing, and Tundus, and it was one of these, the Blog and Mail was done in weeks in advance, and Dave was kind of jokingly saying, well, if Cerebus fans really want to, I can try to find out where in the landfill they are. And I'm just thinking, E.T., the video game, they found that
in New Mexico.
And the part I love about it is that then a couple years later, they're scanning the negatives, and Sandeep's apartment starts on fire, and they get destroyed. And I'm just thinking, well, if Dave had 2 sets of negatives,
yes.
I mean, but then again, as I said, I'm a 4th generation Packrat. I'm not going to get rid of anything. I mean, it's like the tracing paper drawings that Dave, for years he produced these things and then he threw them away because they're just, they're garbage. It's like the photocopies that Gerhard made. These are garbage. Nobody's going to want these. It's like, yes, we are.
Yeah. Well, and you with the blue line for
Melmoth.
Yes. Yeah.
That was one of those. I saw it on. At the time, I had extra money. This is probably 10, 11 years ago, when it would be, okay, I have extra money. I can go on eBay and find random Cerebus crap and buy it. Not the really expensive statues, but just moderately priced stuff. And I found it, and I'm just like, okay, I'll buy this. And I get it, and I'm like, all right, and I noticed there's penciled corrections on a couple of the pages because. Page numbers were missing and stuff. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I took it to Space and, hey, Dave, because I'm the kind of fan, if you're going to sign something, I'm not going to have Neil Adams sign a Detective Comics that he signed 8,000 copies of that day.
Right, yeah.
I'm going to have Neil Adams sign my copy of Following Cerebus number 9.
Right.
Because, then I get to talk to him and his wife for 5-10 minutes about, oh yeah, that trip was great. She just raves how much she loved going to Niagara Falls with Dave. And
he drove them and talked to them the whole way.
He hired a car because Dave doesn't drive.
Oh, that's right, yes.
So
that's right, yeah.
They hired a car.
Was talking to him the whole way.
Yep, and recorded it. And I mean that issue of Following Cerebus is, I think, 104 pages. I mean, it's like 3 issues in one because of the whole thing. And I also had him sign my copy of Anything Goes number 3 because, again, how often are you going to get to see Neil Adams? And then it turns out the comic book store that I go to up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, they get him once every couple of years to come. So the last time he came, I brought my wife and one of my kids, because the other one was at Girl Scout camp, and had Neil sign the Neil Adams Cerebus birthday card that I got for each of my daughters.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then, because it's one thing for free and then you got to pay, and I'm like, I'm not going to pay a lot of money. Because, Neil's charging Neil Adams prices because he can use Neil Adams. So, it's like, my wife's getting the one card signed for the kid that's not there, the other kid's getting her card signed for herself. And, okay, Matt, are you going to take your card to get signed, or are you going to take something else? And it's like, as much as I would love to have my card signed by Dave and by Neil Adams, I had him sign my copy of Skate Man number 1 because it's the most obscure comic book I could find that Neil Adams has anything to do with.
Sure. Yep.
And, I had him sign it, and my wife goes, what the hell? Who thought this was a good idea? And Neil Adams kind of bristled and went, we sold 80,000 copies. And afterward, I told my wife, I'm like, yeah, the problem is he sold 80,000 copies at a time when 80,000 copies at Marvel would have gotten you canceled.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, I get